Despite providing extensive military aid to Kyiv, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has been adamant in his position not to approve the supply of the TAURUS missiles, citing a fear of escalation. I guess Olaf Scholz and other fearers of escalation have to come over to Ukraine and just talk to families who lost their children in a Russian missile attack and tell them that it was okay for their children to die because they saved everyone from escalation. And Olaf Scholz prefers a reasonable amount of Ukrainian children to die instead of German Tauruses hitting Russian military air bases and save children in Ukraine because that might piss off Russian dictator Putin. And then an escalation will follow. So sorry, Ukrainian parents. Your children, real lives lost, seem to be worth less than hypothetical irrational fears. Well, what can I say? I'm glad that Herr Scholz and other fearers are not commanding the Ukrainian army, because the attitude of fearing further escalation while having all the means to win, this is exactly how wars are lost. And it is a great relief to hear someone like Friedrich Merz, an opposition candidate for the German chancellor, who recently said he is open to supply TAURUS long-range missiles to Ukraine under some conditions. I quote, "I wouldn't do it just like that," Merz said on the ARD channel. So how would you do it then, Herr Merz?
At first, there should be an appeal to Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop attacking civilian targets in Ukraine. If Moscow does not concede, Ukraine should be free to use already delivered weapons without restrictions, and the second step would be to supply the TAURUS missiles. Then it is up to Russian President Vladimir Putin to decide how far he wants to escalate this war. Friedrich Merz, German opposition leader.
Well, sounds like a plan to me. And also Friedrich Merz is the parliamentary leader and chancellor candidate of the centre-right CDU-CSU, which is leading the polls 1 year before the federal parliamentary elections. All that makes him currently the most likely candidate to unseat Social Democrat escalation timid Mr. Scholz. TAURUS is a joint German-Swedish cruise missile with a range of over 500 kilometers, that is 310 miles. It boasts a longer reach than missile that Ukraine has received from other partners, such as the British-French-made Scalp, Storm Shadow and American ATACMS just as well. So Merz also criticized the ruling coalition for allowing Moscow to know all the details of its strategy by discussing its steps publicly. The opposition leader added that the decision on the TAURUS supply should be made at the European level and that European countries should become less dependent on the US regarding support for Ukraine. While Ukraine has deployed Western long-range arms for strikes against Russian military targets within Ukrainian territory, of course, Kyiv's partners have not yet permitted their use on Russian soil. Washington and Berlin have permitted the use of certain German and American weaponry just across the Russian border to disrupt Russia's offensive operations. Scholz has been under prolonged pressure from his opponents in the parliament and, reportedly, even coalition partners to green-light the supply of TAURUS missiles. But Mr. Timid is blind to any reasons of logic and necessity and prefers fears of escalation. And that is exactly what dictator Putin needs.